We got Gators breakdown here. We know we're business.
Gators breakdown. Because there's never a dull moment in Gator Nation.
Gators Breakdown podcast is ready to go. I'm your host, David Waters. You can find me on social media at GatorDave_SEC. Official visit start, and the Gators get a commit. Jamir, J.J. Perez committing to the Gators up front on the defensive line in the trenches. We'll get into this commitment, what it means for him, what it means for the Gators, but a big commitment. And when I say big, size-wise, you know for sure, hey, could end up down the road being a big commitment. It was a big commitment that many thought were maybe heading to Ohio State. But one official visit weekend in, and he's committing to the Gators. So we'll get into all of that right here on this episode of Gators Breakdown. Hit that like button. That really helps us out. Like right here on YouTube. Subscribe as well right here on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform if you haven't done so yet. And leave some comments about what you think about this latest commitment for the Gators. And of course, before we get started, hey, remember, more Gators Breakdown at Gators Breakdown Plus. Link is in the description. Extra episodes, chats, ad-free episodes of Gators Breakdown right there. And of course, some new merch. GatorsBreakdownMerch.com. Get your new look Gators Breakdown merch right there. All right. Link is in the description for that as well. So let's get into it. Jamir, J.J. Perez, commits to the Gators. He is from Cleveland, Ohio. That's where the talk of Ohio State mostly arises from. And just kind of recent offer, recent interest, or ramped up interest there from Ohio State. But they're from Cleveland, Ohio, Glenville. That's where he plays. The Gators on his official visit this weekend. 3-star prospect. Certainly has the size you want. I mean, I mentioned that earlier. A big commitment here for sure. Got the size you want at a defensive tackle, nose tackle, a verified 6'4", 360 pounds, a 3-star in both the major services. The 24/7 Sports Composite ranked Perez 1,012 overall and 104th defensive lineman in the country. And the on-3 industry rankings a bit higher. They're a bit higher on him, 657 overall and the 65th defensive lineman in the country. So Florida didn't offer until May 2nd, and then he's on campus for an official visit 2 weeks later, this past weekend, and the Gators get the commitment. I mean, it happened really, really fast. I mean, we're in May right now, May 18th when he commits. May 2nd is when Florida offered him. 2 weeks later, he's on campus, hosted by Mekhi Burrow, of course, a fellow Gator defensive lineman. And after this commitment, says he's shutting his commitment down. Even though Florida, was the first school on Perez's list of official visits this summer, he's going to shut it down. He had official visits scheduled with Vanderbilt on May 29th, Wisconsin on June 6th, Iowa State June 10th, Ohio State June 13th, and Purdue June 20th. Those were previously scheduled to follow this Florida visit. Perez said he will no longer visit those programs after committing to play for the Gators. But hopefully that sticks. We all know how recruiting is. Hopefully this is not a visit high commitment. And I mean, if he does, I'd expect it almost. But hey, if he doesn't and he's sticking true to his word right here, I hope that's the case. I hope that's what happens here. Also received a recent offer from Alabama and was trying. They were trying to schedule a visit before this commitment. So who knows where that one stands? But I mean, if you're taking for his word here and know that it's coming up, we'll see what that means there for that as well. But all the other visits that were scheduled no longer going to happen. So while the ranking isn't all that high, he was getting more recognition. Lately, someone many thought was going to pick Ohio State. So I'll leave that up to you, how you want to decipher that and what it means to you. Cleveland Glenville, that's a pipeline to the Buckeyes. And the Buckeyes were the team to beat heading into these visits with multiple predictions from Ohio State media for them to land Perez. As recent as yesterday, I'm recording this on May 18th. As recent as yesterday on May 17th, on the Ohio State 24/7 site, they were counting down their top 11 remaining 2026 targets for the Buckeyes, and Perez was their 8th ranked, saying, quote, "Have been talking about Perez for a couple of years. He is really coming into his own, and you always want to keep top in-state players at home. I like the Buckeyes' chances here." That was 1 day ago from an Ohio State site. So there you go. So don't let anybody fool you that Ohio State's not interested, or, I mean, I'm sure they're talking to the Ohio State staff and all that. And, maybe that's not the case, from the Ohio State staff side, but at least Ohio State media was thinking this was going to happen for Ohio State. One more time, 6'4", 360-pound defensive lineman. He made the trip south to see what the Gators had to offer. It didn't take long for him to make up his mind. And look, kind of surprising, I think, that he makes that decision, makes that pledge this soon following this weekend's visit. Florida hasn't been recruiting him as long as others. Florida came on strong, and came on strong fast. He described his recent offer from Ohio State as, quote, life-changing. So it's kind of a surprise that he's pulling this commitment already. I mean, and the big pull for him was playing in the SEC. He wanted to play in the SEC. So Florida, acting fast here, has the benefit of playing Southeastern Conference football. Great get for Florida and Perez. Said that Gainesville feels like home. Defensive coach Gerald Chapman, defensive line graduate assistant Jeremy Patterson, and former Gator linebacker and quality control coach David Reese, significant influence on this decision to commit to Florida for Perez. And coaching staff pitched Perez on playing multiple positions across the interior defensive line, primarily at the one technique, the nose tackle spot, but, quote, they see me as a big one tech or the three tech. I'm very diverse, but what I can play on the defensive line, but mainly the one tech. That was the quotes out there. He told On Three's Blake Alderman. So you go and let's pull it up. Let's look at some film. Get his huddle profile playing right here. If you're watching the YouTube version, I mean, what you see is a massive space-eating defensive tackle, natural fit for that, 0-1 technique right there on the Gators defensive line. Always a spot. Always a spot for big defensive tackles that can stuff the run in this conference. We know it. We talked all spring about where Florida may be short on that right now on the current roster. So we know, hey, look, you got to get guys like this. Known for his strength and quickness and ability to make plays in the backfield, Perez has been a leader for Glenville and one of the top defensive prospects in the Midwest. His addition gives Florida a physical presence up front, adds more depth for the future. And you start looking at the tape here, and he dominates without, of course, you play this position, not a ton of big stats. His strengths, dominant interior defensive lineman, size, strength, athleticism, leverage to become, the state of Ohio loves him up there. One of the reasons Ohio State had the interest there. Commands constant double teams, able to reset the line of scrimmage, allowing linebackers and edge rushers to freely flow to the ball, and, can two-gap or penetrate depending on what he's being asked to do. Excels as that nose tackle in the 3-4, but also fits a 1-tech or 3-tech in 4-3 schemes. So uses leverage, hand technique, maintain gap control. I mean, at his size, he's even bigger now than when you're looking at these highlights. Just tosses aside, offensive lineman there. So basically, for this, for Florida, for an SEC school, I mean, this is what you want. This is a prototype size of what you want for somebody that can go dominate in the trenches. What he's got to work on, you're looking for development, especially up in the middle, you'll pass rush. We'll see, can you be a dominant pass rusher up the middle? He's better at pushing the pocket than generating pass rush. But that's a attribute you want in and of itself. If you can push up the middle, let other guys do what they're supposed to do at their positions, a linebacker and edge, okay, you've done your job. But you're not going to be asked to be much of a pass rusher here. Now, you do wonder, 360, that weight, does he have the stamina to hold up, against faster offenses during long drives? Can he drop some weight? Or does Florida want him at 360? Around that? I could imagine probably a little lower. But sit there, you still want him to be explosive, still want him to be disruptive on that interior, still eat those double teams. That's what you're looking for in a player like this at this position. And then you go back to February, do a little bit of research here. You go back to February, and at the best of the Midwest Combine, he was On Three's MVP. Best of the Midwest Combine back in February, defensive tackle Jamir Perez, quote, one of the Midwest best interior defensive linemen. 6'4", 330 pounds, that's what he was then, was tough to block in this setting, overpowering offensive lineman with his combination of get off and pure strength. As Cleveland, Ohio, Glenville standout continues to develop a motor and repertoire, he has the traits to develop into a real handful at the next level. Wisconsin is the leader in this recruitment, with Cincinnati rounding out the top two. So since that February performance, you can see how he's attracted interest from bigger schools, more prominent schools, risen up recruiting boards. So there you go. There's your spiel for what Florida's getting in Perez. Certainly a position of need. Always a position of need. And Perez joins now. And you probably saw the highlights on Saturday. Tampa, Jesuit quarterback Will Griffin, sitting there playing Lakeland. Highlights are all over on Saturday, so go back and look at your extra Twitter timeline. Will Griffin highlights everywhere. Showing some nice ability with his legs, showing some nice ability with some zip on the ball. He showed a pretty good bit. Showed a pretty bit there in that spring scrimmage against Lakeland. But Perez joins Tampa Jesuit quarterback Will Griffin of Florida's currently two-man class for the 2026 class. Of course, got to go back, kind of quick history. Isaiah Williams, linebacker, decommits. Sefner Armwood, Jalen Waters, the cornerback, he decommitted. The other cornerback, Devin Jackson, decommitted as well. We chronicled recruiting not long ago right here on Gators Breakdown. Better news this time with a fast-rising defensive lineman. And then, talking about the rankings, so we'll see what that means. Getting an offer from Florida, committing to Florida. Like I said, there was some talk of Alabama. Ohio State was in the mix too. So we'll see what that means here. As I said, go back into February, some recent MVP status from a combine there, a high school combine. So we'll see what the rankings. A lot of people are going to look at that, and you'll probably see rivals try to shove in your face a 3-star defensive tackle. Even maybe some Gator fans of why reaching for a 3-star defensive tackle. Recent storylines. As I said, you have the big schools of Ohio State and Bama trying to get into the mix. Ohio State media thinking it was as bad I won't say close to done, but going into the visits that Ohio State was the team to beat. The very first visit favors Florida, and they get the commitment. So looking ahead, as I said, just a two-man class right now for the class of 2026, but you look ahead, and there was a decision date that was set recently, July 1st, for another defensive lineman, Jaraylon McCoy. Big priority there for the Gators from Tupelo, Mississippi, 121st overall player on the 24/7 Sports Composite, 155th overall in the On3 industry ranking, 6'6", 245-pounder, former LSU commit, back at the Under Armour All-American game as he committed to LSU, only to decommit about a month later. So he released the top 5 back in March, and that consisted of Florida, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Auburn, and LSU. He did replace the Aggies with Texas. So that's the one to look out for coming up. Has a visit scheduled for Florida as well. Before that July 1st date, maybe Florida can put a bow on that one, kind of like what they just did here. But making noise on the first official visit weekend. But since we're talking about defensive linemen, that was a recent storyline, of course, with the July 1st decision date there for McCoy and Florida. I think looking pretty good for that one. So moving ahead. I guess moving ahead in the episode, but let's take a look back before we wrap up on this quick episode, getting you caught up on recruiting of the visitors for the Gators this past weekend. 7 official visitors. 5-star offensive tackle Felix Ojo. Hopefully, I meant to look that up before here, but anyway, if you follow recruiting, you know who it is. Florida made a major move for him. He and his family loved the visit. Big fans of Billy Napier and his approach outside of football. He also mentioned early playing time as a big selling point. Florida near the top after this visit, with Colorado already getting an official visit, and then upcoming visits to Ohio State, Michigan, and Oklahoma. Miami Northwestern 5-star wide receiver Calvin Russell was on campus. Plenty of respect for Billy Gonzalez, likes the idea of playing in the SEC. Russell will be official visiting other schools following his visit to Florida. LSU, Oregon, North Carolina, Miami, and Michigan. Florida's got some work to do on that one. 5-star cornerback Chauncey Kennan, he's close by there in Sarasota. Hopefully proximity plays a factor there. Durham, North Carolina, South Garner, 4-star offensive lineman Ekene Ogboko. Good that Florida got him back on campus, but a tough pull with some other programs, possibly Georgia leading the way there. 4-star edge rusher Luke Waffle, he visited Florida this past weekend, put Florida in his top 5 right before the visit. He's got set visits to Ohio State, Penn State, USC, and Texas in that order in the coming weeks. Florida got some ground to make up in this recruitment. Even though getting into that top 5, there is a family tie. Waffle's dad, there's a tie to off-field staffer Steve Spurrier Jr., as they were old roommates. Penn State looking like the team to beat currently. Then at Fairburn, Georgia, Langston Hughes, running back out of Georgia, Langston, out of Fairburn, Georgia, Langston Hughes is Carson Baker. There we go. That's his name, Carson Baker. From Langston Hughes up there in Georgia. He's moved Florida into his top 5. His previous top 5 was Clemson, Florida State, Georgia, and Ohio State, and South Carolina. Says his visits will change since Florida made a move here. And a decision is coming this summer, so a lot going on there for 4-star running back Carson Baker. Florida definitely a school to watch now after this weekend. And pretty cool video out there of Carson. And Florida's got this new setup. It looks like a bedroom all decked out in Gator paraphernalia. Current looks, vintage looks, Gator helmet, telephone. But pretty cool videos out there. Shout out to those guys. Shout out to the creative department right there at Florida. You know, have gotten pretty creative there with Billy Napier with all these recruit photos and the like, making it fun. But there you go. Kind of look at this past weekend. We'll see what official visitors coming up, the storylines following those in the coming weeks. But one official visit weekend in, and the Gators get a commitment. Gators get a commitment right there. Jamir, J.J. Perez up front, big man on the defensive line. All right, that'll do it for this short recruiting update episode with the big news of a commitment right there for the Gators. Later this week, it will be the return of Will Miles here on Gators Breakdown. Hard at work on the Read and Reaction Preview magazine. Got some time coming up right here on Gators Breakdown. Some announcements as far as the magazine goes coming up from Will this week on Gators Breakdown. That episode will be Tuesday night. We'll go live. And we'll take some questions, or we'll answer some questions already given to me by Gators Breakdown Plus members. And a little catch up with Will. So, to be a fun episode there Tuesday night. So be sure to tune in. Be sure to tune in. That'll do it for this episode of the Gators Breakdown. I'm your host, David Waters. You can find me on social media at GatorDave_SEC. Guys and girls out there, thank you for joining me on this episode of Gators Breakdown.